And good morning. Thank you for joining us. I am Tamara Scott. It is a snowy, blustery morning here in Iowa, but we are pre-taping. So maybe the day you're watching this, it will be sunny, bright, warm weather. I doubt it. I am thrilled you're with us. This is Truth for Our Time. We're powered by webcast1live.com. And I have an in-studio guest today. And Miyoko, I'm just going to ask you to pronounce your last name for me so I say it right.
Sure, Hikiji.
Hikiji. It's a fun last name. Miyoko Hikiji. And she'll be talking today with me about military sexual assaults, what we're doing, what we're hearing, what's not being reported, and what we can possibly do to correct the situation. I just came across this website, if you will. I'll just give you a little portion of it. We've known this situation was there for a while now. I remember doing a forum a year ago February this time on Life. The Republican Party had Huckabee come in and stood for life, which I appreciate anytime a political party will make a stand. And we were discussing that so-called war on women that the Democrats waged in the 2012 election. It was nothing but rhetoric. And anytime they have women's rights issues, it always ends up in death for one, at least during an abortion. Their women's rights issues always come to abortion. I don't understand. It's not an adoption option. It's not life. It's not even anything for women other than a very limited sexual category. I don't understand that either. Whether it's Sandra Fluke, whether it's Wendy Davis, it always has to deal with the right to kill. I've never understood that. And for years, the liberal-minded set would tell us, stay out of my bedroom. Don't push your morals on me. And they reduced themselves so much in 2012 that it was no longer stay out of my bedroom. It was now welcome to my womb. Won't you pay for my birth control? How odd was that? So I didn't mean to take off on that tangent, but during that forum, I brought up the fact that if there were truly a concern for women on the left, you wouldn't have legislators out of Colorado saying that women shouldn't carry guns on the campus to protect themselves from rape, but he thought they were okay to be in combat. There was just a hypocrisy there that didn't fit. You would understand that women care about issues more than their sexuality. We are bigger than that, larger than that, more intelligent than that, and a whole person. To limit it to just that category shows you what the other side is they are the ones who are discriminatory, frankly. That's all they can allow a woman to be labeled by, is the sexuality or the abortion of one. The choice was what they call it. As a woman, women's issues are impacted. What are they? Every issue that you vote on is a woman's issue. I'm sorry, but education? Women are concerned about how our children are being educated, the quality of that education, the material or the indoctrination that comes with that education. Insurance. Women make up, I think the percentage was somewhere in the 90s of all healthcare decisions for their children, for themselves, often for their spouses, at least with a consulting role, and often, sometimes for their parents. Women are involved in the healthcare issue. Work. If a woman can't find a job, we hear now so much about single women being the only income in their home. If my husband is unemployed, that impacts me as well as a woman. So I can't think of yet an issue, a voting issue, that is not a woman's issue. So no matter which side of the aisle you're on, it irritates me when I see them limit it to a woman's issue, or the fact that we have to have a woman candidate. Chris Christie, though he's in his own issue of turmoil right now, burning his own bridges, however that may work out, I don't know. But he proved in the last election that he could bring along the single woman vote as a man. So again, let us all have the insight to understand it is our intellect, it is our credibility as people, not limited to a gender that we were born with. All right? So going back, sometimes I don't know where these things come from, but I'll say that there's a reason they probably came. 3,553 reports of sexual abuse in the military. Now, this is from a website called Policy Mike. The Pentagon releases startling new statistics on military sexual assault. Caitlin Bancroft is the author. 3,553 reports. This is what we were talking about last February, and my concern then was the numbers that were not being reported And of those being reported, the numbers who were not getting help were not getting justice. In fact, having their military careers ruined because they had the courage to come forward once they were attacked. This has a 43% increase from the year before. So perhaps reporting is coming up. This was released between July 1st, 2012 and June 30th, 2013. During that same period, there were 219 casualties in the war in Iraq and Afghanistan. Last year, soldiers were 15 times more likely to be raped by a comrade than killed by the enemy. Understand that. Soldiers were 15 times more likely to be raped by a comrade than killed by the enemy. And I think these numbers are now, it's no longer just women. Now that we have the open sexual policy that we do in the military, men are now at risk as well. Miyoko, you are the author of the book, All I Could Be. You served in the military. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you for taking on this topic. Thank you for joining me in studio on this blustery, snowy winter day.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
You were in the military. What years did you enlist?
In 1995 at 18, I did 3 years in the active Army. I did about 6 years in the Iowa National Guard while I was attending Iowa State University.
First off, let me thank you for your service.
Thank you.
As a veteran, thank you for your service. Thank you for the gifts and talents that you spent protecting us at home. This war has been difficult because unlike wars past, even World War II, we had sanctions. We had women going to the assembly lines to make sure that the troops had all that they needed on the front lines. These last couple of decades, though our military has been in war, here at the home, we have not been. And I've had soldiers tell me that's the way it's supposed to be. That's the way it's supposed to work. Our military keeps us safe so we can go on with life. But my concern is that we don't understand the sacrifice that military families are making, the risk that military soldiers are under, and it doesn't compel us as quickly to stop, to end these wars, or to make sure that our soldiers are doing things that are profitable, fruitful, and safe.
I agree with that. I think it's a soldier's pride to know that when they're serving overseas, that their family doesn't have worry, that they're comfortable going about their daily routine. And those were things that I imagined a lot, was that my mom went about her workday. I didn't have to worry or live in fear because of what it was that we were doing. But at the same time, then when people come home, they have such a difficult time reintegrating with post-traumatic stress, physical injuries. And part of that difficulty and adjustment sometimes is a lack of understanding by the community, which is 99% not serving in a uniform, right, to really wrap themselves around those people because they weren't an intimate part of that sacrifice or that experience. And so it's very hard for them to understand and get involved.
Were you in Iowa when you enlisted, or did you live in Iowa now? Where did you live then?
I lived in Cedar Rapids. I was born and raised in Cedar Rapids. So when I enlisted, I went to Fort Polk, Louisiana for my first permanent duty station, then Fort Bliss, Texas. And then when I returned, I moved to Ames.
Okay. Now, I sent out a quick email blurb to our friends when we knew we'd be meeting today at 9 o'clock. It's not a regular schedule. But if you're hearing this, if you're listening online, if you want to join in the conversation, it is 855-244-0077. 855-244-0077. Of course, you can join us on the chat line as well, and I'll try and keep an eye on that and pay attention to that. So, Miyoko, you served in the military. While you were there, were you a victim of sexual assault? I guess I hate to be personal, but why did you take this issue on?
Right. I have 2 incidents of military sexual trauma in my career. The first was while I was on active duty before I was deployed. The second was while I was serving in the Iowa Guard, also before I deployed. I was very fortunate, actually, during my deployment to have some very stand-up battle buddies around me, women and men, that were very protective of looking out for me when we went out to different forward operating bases where there were hundreds of soldiers from other units around the world that did not know me, and I could have certainly been at risk being around or being cornered by. So they were very good about taking care of me there. So the bulk of my story in my book is really just about the deployment experience. I wanted people to understand sort of the day-to-day life of what it was like. And there is quite a bit of description about being being a woman in a very large group of men. There is sort of that situation there so people can understand. But I didn't really want to talk a lot about my incidents first, because I knew that if I drew the conversation to a sexual topic, then I would never be able to get off of that topic. That would become the new focus of my book, where, there were accomplishments and great things that women did there that weren't connected to sexuality. So I'm glad you brought that up actually at the beginning of the conversation, because we're whole people, and that's certainly a part of our being, and it's certainly a factor there. And I had a very good relationship while I was there, but that wasn't the bulk of the story. There was so much more going on, and it was mostly mission related. So I wanted to take that topic on after I came home, and I started talking about the book, and women were coming up to me after my presentations and telling me their sexual assault stories. I was talking about women in combat, and they were telling me sexual assault stories. And I felt like they were coming to me because they needed someone to have a voice, to do something about that. And since I had some personal experience, I felt that that was the way I was led to go.
And so if people feel the need to contact you now after hearing us talk today, how might they do that?
Certainly by email. If you go to my website, www.allicouldbe.com, you'll find my email address, and you'll be able to contact me that way.
allicouldbe.com. If they want to find a copy of the book, Amazon or online or bookstores, where?
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and our independent bookseller, Beaverdale Books.
Oh, very
here
good.
In town. Mm-hmm.
Very good. All right. So you're okay. First, tell us, when you were in the military, you were stationed where?
My first permanent duty station was in Louisiana at Fort Polk.
And then you went abroad?
And then I went to Fort Bliss, Texas. Then I came home, and then I went to Iraq.
So you were in Iraq, and so just so our listeners can and our viewers can understand what was happening while you were there. What we now see Hussein is gone, but he wasn't gone while you were there.
Right. It was the very beginning of the war. So this was when we were mobilizing from Fort McCoy, Wisconsin to fly overseas. We were watching Jessica Lynch's capture story. So this was...
So that takes us back. Jessica Lynch was one of the first American soldiers that was taken captive. Mm-hmm. Beyond that, because she was a woman, we were a little bit more concerned about things that could be happening. It raised the debate of should women even be in the military. Mm-hmm. So that's taking us back to a little bit of the mindset where the country was when you were there.
Saddam Hussein was still on the run. Girls' schools were just starting to open up, or they opened up the year that we were there, because at the time girls weren't allowed to seek an education while he was in power. So while he was on the run, a few schools opened, and we were able to do some civil affairs missions to bring them some supplies, build them some desks to try to spread goodwill and, help them to, get on their feet and pursue some things that they, wanted to do before Saddam Hussein was in power.
So not only are you a woman in a man's field, so to speak, in the military at that point, you're dealing with a culture that is hostile towards women.
Absolutely.
It's a Muslim background. And women were not allowed, were women allowed to even go out in public without a male representative with them?
Not that I was aware of. I really didn't have the opportunity to interact with a lot of women. Most of the missions that we would have done in town where we would have dealt with a leader, it would have been a man. So there weren't very many opportunities. The school teachers were women. Most of them were very, very shy, and so they didn't get a chance to really interact with us enough that I could understand their lifestyle a little better. But it was something that we were very fearful of. I mean, we were told to make sure that our hair was tied back very tightly so that while we were, working with the people, that they didn't right away recognize which one of us were women, because it might put us at a greater danger than just being a male soldier.
That's, I guess, what I'm wanting our listeners and our viewers to understand. Just how huge the threat was. Every part of your life was dangerous. Outside of the military base, if you had been caught, if you had been, someone decided you were female, you were at a risk that way. But now also within the military structure itself, there was risk.
Absolutely. I think that's one of the more difficult parts of being a woman who's deployed, is that you lose any sense of safety at all. I mean, it's really difficult to know exactly who it is that you can trust. And I say that, really giving credit to the people that I worked with that were great soldiers, because most of them are. I mean, most men in the military aren't criminals, they're not rapists. Most of them are great, but it only takes one.
Right.
And I think that is the fear, is that sometimes you're looking for or waiting for protecting yourself from everyone because you don't know who that one person is. And that's where, my deployment was 403 days. Over a long period of time, that's where the stress really begins to build up.
403 days. And how old were you?
26.
Okay. And why was it you decided to go into the military?
My father was in the Army. So
Okay.
there was a little tradition
Sure.
there, but I didn't have any money to really get to college. I mean, that was my first thought was I wanted to be able to go to school. I wanted a better education, and I didn't know how else to pay for it. And it seemed like a very, honorable way to do it. So it was an easy decision for me to make.
According to the Department of Labor, between 20 and 48% of female veterans were sexually assaulted in the military. More women leave the military with post-traumatic stress disorder from rape than combat. Was it a widespread problem when you were there?
That would be really difficult for me to determine, but I think the number of women that I interact with, the percentage of them that are honest enough about it, seems alarming for me.
So my question, widespread, might not even work because of we see that the numbers that are not reporting it. So it could be happening all around, but you don't know it because women are hiding it. The victims are protecting the perpetrators by hiding it.
Absolutely.
All right. Now, Ryan, can we go ahead and go to break now, and then we'll come right back? We've got to go to a break. We've got to give our sponsors due time. And you're hearing this program on webcast1live.com, webcast1live.com. I am Tamara Scott. It is Truth for Our Time. And if you would like to be a part of this program some way, either in a sponsorship or either as a guest as well, we're always looking for information to help make us all better as a people and as a community. You can contact me through truthforourtime@gmail.com, truthforourtime@gmail.com. We often deal with Common Core on this show, and we're still continuing to work on the Common Core. We have legislators in the state legislature who are working 5 or 6 bills being drafted this session. The final date is February 21st. We're of course working up against that first funnel deadline, but we have legislators who are doing what they can to protect the Iowa people, school children in Iowa, and privacy for Americans everywhere. By doing away with some of the data collection, the obsessive testing, those assessments that are intrusive, asking too much of our students. We've given you the stories on other shows on here as through our podcast. You can find those at tamarascottlive.com, tamarascottlive.com. So today we're taking a bit of a break and a very, I would say, just as important topic, and we're going to get some legislation that's at your state house as well, and some help that we may be able to give through the state. Even though military is a federal issue, we can also affect it and impact it here on a state level as well. So my guest is Miyoko Hijiki. Am I saying I did it?
Hikichi.
I get my J and my K mixed up. Hijiki.
Hikiji.
I got my K and my J mixed up. All right. Well, we'll be right back after these messages. You're hearing this on webcast1live.com.
Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places, especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart, and it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
All across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life, change your relationships, transform your world.
Get away from us, you mean old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Help! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit! You're our hero!
And thanks for joining us. I am Tamara Scott. This is Truth for Our Time. I'm talking with Miyoko Hikiji. Did I say it? I
did.
it. I've mastered it. In the alphabet, she was explaining to me the alphabet is JK, but on her name it's KJ first. So now that I know that, I think it's almost a hiccup. Hikiji. So we're talking today about a very serious subject. We're talking about military assaults, and I gave you some figures earlier in the show, and I can go back to those. Oh, somebody forgot to silence their phone today. How embarrassing. 3,553 reports of sexual assault, a 43% increase in the year before. This could be because more people are now actually coming forward as more and more people are being discriminated against or being victimized. More people are coming forward, but it's all the more we need to deal with this issue. I guess, Miyoko, take us through. We've talked a little bit about your experience over there. We've talked about having to have your hair pulled back and the fact that I would not make it because my hair just simply doesn't go back some days. So I would have been at risk all the way around. But from service to book, why?
When I was deployed, I only had one semester left, and I was a journalism major. So I think I was very much into reading all the headlines, following news, writing stories every day. And when I got there, I realized I was living a great story. And I was living a story that wasn't very accessible to like my community, my parents. They could never imagine or understand what it was I was doing. And I also knew I couldn't really process it all every day without finding something that I knew how to do. And that was something I did was right. So most evenings I spent time either writing a letter home or writing a journal entry. I kept a pretty detailed mission log and map, so I had some historical background and enough information to put a book together, which really was what I intended to do. But it didn't start right away. I had a lot of decompression time when I came home, and I'm still sort of decompressing. I tell people that you never really go back to who you were because you can't even remember who that is. You've changed so much.
Yeah.
But you learn to live in a new normal, and you learn to adapt. And part of that is taking some of that emotional burden and passing it on. And even though, for my mother, when she read my book, she cried, it was something she was proud to take a part of from me as a way for her to understand me and to just, parent for life. So I really wanted people to be able to see the jobs that women were doing over there. It wasn't really a story about me. It could have been any woman truck driver, or lots of different women soldiers have similar experiences. And a lot of women that write me about the book after reading it tell me that. So it was a way to sort of validate them. I think there's they feel very invisible in the war effort. I think when we see a lot of heroes, we usually identify those as male soldiers, people kicking down doors, and they're always some of the most highly trained military soldiers, and that's fair. We owe the Green Berets and the Special Forces and the snipers and the SEALs lots of credit, because there are very few people who are able to do that. But there are, hundreds of thousands of women. 283,000 women have been deployed to the Middle East now in 12 years. That's a massive number compared to about 40,000 women from Desert Storm. So who is going to tell their story? So I guess I wanted to be a part of letting people know, what else was going on there.
Having just returned from Israel and seeing that in Israel, every student, male or female, does a 2-year to 3-year stint in their military. I don't agree with that for America.
Sure.
But I see why Israel needs to do it, being such a small country, small populated country, still regrowing, still gaining from their birth of only 50, 60 years ago, and such a small country geographically with hostile neighbors surrounding them on all sides. So I can see why it works and why it's necessary for Israel. So does this bring up the topic of women in the military for you? Do people approach you on that? Do women have a place in the military? And is military different than women in combat?
When people ask me about compensatory service, I agree with you. I don't know that every American citizen, man or woman, needs to have a service period. I do think that in a volunteer army, we have a responsibility to protect the people who volunteer to serve. So that's a part of making sure that the military system is capable of protecting women and men from sexual perpetrators, and a system to get them to trial and get them kicked out, because obviously the people that we put in uniform and send all over the world, we want to represent America's best standards, our highest morals, and we don't want people who are criminals to be a part of our professional army.
Right. I think as much as I feel for the victims, I don't want those type of people in the military who would perpetrate and commit such crimes.
Absolutely. And as far as women in combat, I really talked about that a lot in the spring when the generals of all the branches decided to rescind the ground combat exclusion order of 1994 that said women couldn't be in ground combat. And I think the reason they did that was, one, it was very difficult to deny that most women hadn't already been in the last 10 years in the Middle East. So it sort of validated what had already been happening. Most of them saw women serve in combat roles, even if they weren't assigned infantry positions. If they needed to work a security checkpoint and their position was fired upon, they returned fire. And so they, in essence, were in a combat situation. And, the great majority of them executed that with as much skill as the men who were beside them. And so that was very difficult to deny. I think one thing that I try to tell people is that, I served with men who were twice my size, who could bench press 300 pounds.
They could be two of you.
They, and they had, they looked like soldiers. And that's what people tell me. I don't look like a soldier. But some of those same men would refuse to get into a truck and run a mission. And so what I tell people is that what really makes a soldier is way beyond how many push-ups you can do and how many tattoos you have, or, all these things that we sort of associate with, that persona. It's the heart. If you have the heart to do the job, the willingness to risk your life, you can't be a soldier if you're not willing to do the mission, no matter how big or small you are. And because most of the women fought so hard to get to that place, they weren't about to back down by the time they got there. So we didn't really have an issue with women like malingering or being unwilling to do jobs. They wanted to go out there and prove it. So when it comes to, physicality, that's a pretty minor issue compared to everything else that's required to be a good combat soldier in modern day warfare.
You didn't have room for fear because you had to prove you were capable.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realize that male soldiers got a chance to say no. I thought when you were a soldier, you went. The military's changed from what I understand.
A little bit. There was disciplinary action for people who didn't obey orders, but it still existed.
All right. So Again, we're here to talk about the military assault. There's so much more to talk about. I want people to have a kind of an understanding of where it's at and where your mindset is. You're not just a woman who's on a mission and bitter and angry. This is not why you're here. This is not why you've written this book. I can tell. Why are you taking on this issue of military assault? Of sexual assault in the military.
No, that's absolutely right. I love the military. I think it would be very easy to say that I'm sort of going after the military because I'm angry now, but really I'm just inspired. I'm inspired by women who tell me their stories, and even Vietnam-era veteran women because their careers depended on their silence, because their family's income and ability to thrive depended on their job or their health care or their promotion or their duty station or all these other things. They just couldn't do that. And so they really had this tremendous burden to keep it all together for a greater cause, for their unit, for their families. And so I really felt inspired because sexual assault is a crime. It's a crime against the soul. It's a crime against God. It's a crime in our country. Mm-hmm. And there's no way that we can let something like that go as a people. Soldiers are sworn to defend the Constitution. So the constitutional rights of the soldier must also be upheld.
Okay. And so you've mentioned that as you speak, more and more women keep coming to you in Iowa. How many women? It's hard. I guess you probably can't put a number to it, but give us an idea when you speak in Iowa, the numbers of people who may come up to you afterwards who've been in the military, or the stories that you're hearing.
Usually about one or two at every speech. It's pretty consistent. So as far as numbers in Iowa, it would be difficult for me to estimate it at anything other outside the national trend. There was just a rape study done on, it was on CNN yesterday, I happened to see, but it listed how the states ranked as far as reported rapes, and Iowa was number 26.
In our military or overall?
Overall. So
we're number 26.
We're number 26. So somewhere in the middle seems like we have a long way to improve. If that's our civilian population, our military is a reflection of that, and the rates among military are always higher. So, it would be very silly for me to assume that there was no issue going on here at all.
We're 26 in the nation of reported rapes.
That's right.
That's quite alarming for a civilian. And then we wonder how many are not reported above that. We know there's a certain number above that. In the military, we can assume it's higher. All right, so let's talk. You have a bill in front of you. We don't have a bill number yet. We're this new in the process on this bill. It hasn't been given a Senate file number, but it will start with SF. And if you're looking on your website, you can go to legis.iowa.gov, legis.iowa.gov. You can do a search by a name, a word that would be in it. So if you would say sexual abuse in state military forces, then this bill should come up, even though we don't have a name for you. It is being, interestingly enough, sponsored by Sodders and Hatch. So you have a Republican and a Democrat, I think, on the bill. I think Sodders is Republican. I know Hatch is Democrat.
I think they're both Democrats.
Are they both Democrats? Is Sodders a Democrat? Okay. So you have two Democrats. Act relating to state military forces by establishing response, reporting requirements for handling of allegations of sexual abuse in state military forces. So I know this bill's relatively new. Have you gotten a chance to look over it yet?
Not in depth. I was, a part of the writing of it and a part of the conferencing that really identified the issues that needed to be addressed for the state. And I think one of the loopholes is that in the Iowa National Guard, sexual assault is a crime that is reported to civilian authorities. So if a soldier's drilling at their hometown armory or they're training at Camp Dodge, for example, and a sexual assault occurs, it's a crime that should be investigated by civilian authorities. But the loophole, I think, in the Iowa Code of Military Justice was that there was no duty for the commander to report to civilian authorities. So even though it was handled by civilians, there was no duty to report it. And I really got the sense that in the military, command discretion is something that's sort of suppressing these cases. And it only takes one woman to see, actually it only takes all the women in a unit to see one woman report and be retaliated against and have her career ruined for everyone else to be quiet if it happens to them in any time past or the near future. So the mandatory reporting system gives an objective source the opportunity to come in and do a real investigation. It doesn't let too much time go by before statements are taken, crime scene pictures, rape kits are done, and that's the kind of information that we need to prosecute sex offenders. So that gives an objective source to the problem, and it keeps it out of the chain of command, and I think that was one of the goals. And then as far as numbers, since that seems a little bit of a mystery, I mean, we already have the 70-80% non-reporting, but in the bill includes the Adjutant General of the state of Iowa reporting to the governor and the legislature what the numbers of reported assaults are in our state. So that gives us a benchmark once this is in place to see what's going on. And until we know that, we don't know if what we're doing works or if we make any changes, if that leads to real improvement. And I think the situation is so large now with the numbers of people coming out, we just need to have a better handle on what's going on.
And the last thing we want to do is have a bill that makes it more difficult, somehow creates another problem. So that's hard to know when you're doing a bill. So this is why we would invite the public to come alongside, look this bill up on the legis.iowa.gov website, and give us your thoughts on it. You will be having a subcommittee at some point, do you think? You'll be having a hearing on this bill, or?
I'm anticipating that sometime soon, yes.
And so the purpose of the bill is to get those in charge to report them.
If a soldier reports a sexual assault to one of their leaders, a non-commissioned officer, an officer in charge, their commander, that person becomes essentially what we know as in the state of Iowa as a mandatory reporter. So they have to call civilian authorities to investigate it as a crime.
And so even under the best situations, the best of circumstances, there still may be retaliation for a victim. And that's what we're trying to stop. But there's still, it's just anytime you have human nature involved, it is difficult. But these types of helps make it, at least we have a chance at justice.
I think so. I think it's a starting point. I think there's a lot that can be done, but when it's taken outside of that particular unit, I think it's a lot more difficult to exercise that kind of retaliation, because then all of a sudden we have a public report, and if you had negative action against the soldier afterward without a very justifiable reason, it would be very easy to put those two together and then hold the commander responsible for breaking that policy of retribution for reporting a crime.
All right. We have to go to our second break. We will be right back after these messages. I am Tamara Scott. You're watching or listening to Tamara Scott Live with Truth for Our Time. We're powered by webcast1live.com, and we're talking with Miyoko Hikiji. And so we're dealing with the issue of sexual assault in the military. And if you're wondering why we're dealing with it on a state issue when it's a federal issue, we'll talk about that when we come back right after these messages. Stay tuned.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershot.
I'm administrative manager
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
You know, if we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, you know, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, it's your home.
You know, it's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're going to do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's going to be a good experience for you, or else it's free, What type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
I mean, if you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? I mean, you can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I mean, I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going though, I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm gonna take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
Yeah. Oh, sorry, you caught me. I'm just having a good time with my guest. I guess we should be professional too, right? Tamara Scott sitting in, actually I'm sitting in for myself, I guess, host for so many other people. I'm actually here for myself today. This is Truth for Our Time. You can catch this show on a podcast if you want to share it with friends. We keep them all at Tamara Scott Live on the YouTube channel just for your easy access. And if you want to contact me, certainly do. truthforourtime@gmail.com, truthforourtime@gmail.com. And you can follow us on Twitter at truthforourtime or at Tamara Scott 16. Joining me is Miyoko Hikiji. Miyoko, M-I. For those, I forget that some of you aren't watching online, you're listening on a podcast. Miyoko is M-I-Y-O-K-O. Miyoko. Hikiji, H-I-K-I-J-I. I'm kind of proud of myself because I have it now. So, we're talking about assault, military assault, sexual assault. And we've talked about post-traumatic stress syndrome before on this channel, on this station, way back when I was on, my goodness, I think we were doing it 2 stations ago. Stan White, someone I consider a friend now, whose son died from being forced to take medication through the military to deal with some of those issues that needed dealt with, more than a pill. And actually died in his sleep, I think, as a complication of some of those drugs. So we're dealing with it on that level. But there's another one that was a stress that was, and I just asked you about it, and I'm not remembering the acronym. It was military stress or something for sexual assault in the military. It was
they call it MST for military sexual trauma.
Military sexual trauma. When you have something that's such a problem that you have to come up with an acronym to deal with the aftermath, you've got an issue.
Mm-hmm. I think they sort of relate that to like rape trauma syndrome is basically what they use in the civilian world for sort of post-traumatic stress type symptoms that result immediately after and then progress over time if left untreated after an incident.
And because most of these, a high number of them were not even reported, certainly it is left untreated.
It is. About 1 in 3 women that go to the VA to file a claim for any reason, if asked, will report military sexual trauma. So they might go for a back injury or migraines or something else. And now the VA is implementing a mandatory screening for sexual trauma. And they're finding that, over a third of them are answering yes to that. And that might be sort of their way that they're starting to approach the system, getting their foot in the door before they get to the point where they're ready to talk about those things. And actually the VA here in Des Moines just opened a women's clinic that just has a wing for women where you don't have to sit with the other men or go between rooms for different appointments. You get to have one particular area. And I think it's small changes like that that make women feel comfortable enough for more of them to start to seek help.
All right. Why are we dealing with this on a state issue? We have a state bill before us. It's being sponsored by Souders and Hatch. And so, and I need to make clear, this show is not promoting or not promoting or not. We're just getting the information out. We're learning more about the bill. And it just came across my desk as we're doing this interview. So I'll be investigating it myself, looking through it, talking with some experts to see what they think, if there's helps we can put to it, or if they think it's a bad idea. I can't imagine, but we'll see.
Absolutely.
We'll see. The last thing we want to do is create more problems
Sure.
than solutions. But why a bill for the state? When we think of military, we think national.
I think especially the Iowa National Guard has had a very high operation tempo in the last 12 years, more so than many other states that actually have more Guard soldiers. So we've spent a lot of time on active duty. We've spent a lot of time on state orders, doing state emergency duty. And so it would take care of soldiers who are training on drill status for weekends and on state emergency duty. I think it's just a place to start. I think it's a place to address the military system where we can to make a small change for the community that we live in. I live here in Iowa. If I know it'll make a difference for one woman who lives here, then it matters to me. You know, I know there's a much larger problem out there, but that's not something I'm able to fix right now. So this is one small step.
So you're making a difference where you are, which if all of us tried doing that, we'd correct it everywhere.
I think so.
Without the big money, without the long-reaching government arms, we'd have more control. It's a great idea. I'm not saying the bill, like I said, we're still learning about, but making a difference where you are is a great idea, and I wish more people would. So when you're talking about the military's done, it seems to me those folks I know in the Guard here in Iowa have done more tours of duty than those who are actively serving in the Marines or the Army or the Air Force. Those who are on the National Guard, which is supposed to be the reserve, I know people who have done their third and maybe their fourth tour. Was that ever the way it was intended to be?
You know, I don't think the military was designed to work that way. I mean, the Guard was always meant to be more for state emergencies and really not to deploy at the tempo that it has. I think that has led to some of the post-traumatic stress disorder problems that we have, is that soldiers that come home from not just one deployment, but then multiple deployments, they don't have enough time to really deal with the first time before they have to compress a second experience, which is likely going to be traumatic. And then they return to communities instead of active duty posts where there's not a system in place to sort of identify those symptoms. We lose our battle buddy system, which is what we functioned in, and it seems to be that it's easier to heal in that same system, sort of in the safety and security among the people that you deployed with. So for me, I actually finished my enlistment contract while I was deployed, so when I came home, I just went home. I didn't have to come back to check in with anybody, or I didn't have any more drill weekends to do, so that network fell out from under me. So then it was up to me to be my own advocate for my health care. And I think for a soldier who is, lower enlisted, like a specialist or a sergeant or a private, when that happens and you go back to your community, you're used to other people leading you and making decisions for you. It's very difficult to turn the tables and say, now I'm going to be a patient advocate. And I'm going to go to the VA and I'm going to demand services. That's a very difficult position to be in, especially when some of the doctors are more like commanding officer type figures. So I think it's harder to negotiate that system as a civilian patient.
You're saying, and we haven't even thought about that. We see our soldiers come back and we think they're going to be leaders in the community, but you're right. Many of them are used to taking orders. They're used to having everything done for them, schedules planned out. So I hadn't even thought about that aspect. I had thought about how difficult it is for men and women to come back into being a parent, being a spouse, living in close quarters with those you love again, as opposed to the long-distance relationships. I've seen the military service destroy good families. I've seen men walk away from women who were wonderful spouses who were about to have everything they wanted in life, throw it up to just change the whole norm. And we can't figure it out, but we know that it's something to do with that military tour. It could be the third one, could be the fourth one. You say you were gone 400 days. People are missing a year of their child's life.
That's right. And when people ask, well, if women make only 15% of the force and then maybe only 20% of those 15% are assaulted, are we really looking at a number where we want to put a lot of effort into it? Well, to me, absolutely yes, just from the get-go. But I mean, you bring up an issue that's important, is these women go back to families, their mothers, their parents, their spouses. You know, they teach other kids in schools. They are a part of our healthy community. And so when they have a trauma that affects their ability to lead or be confident, and they start making decisions based on the fears of their syndrome instead of what makes sense for their family, then they really are affecting a lot of people.
Everyone deserves justice. Everyone deserves to know that they will at least have a hearing for justice. And so we're talking about this as far as military assaults on women. But as I mentioned briefly before at the beginning of this show, as we've now opened up the parameters of the military, and I had a call into Elaine Donnelly, and she emailed back, this is a concern they're working on as well at the Military Readiness Center. But I know I used to talk with her about when we changed the qualifications for being in the military, once we're allowing the homosexual community to come in very tight quarters in very high-pressure situations, now we're seeing sexual assault towards men as well.
I think the data for sexual assaults against men has probably been consistent. I think more men are reporting now, just like women, because some of the stigma for a man to report has gone away. Most of the men that have reported rapes against them have been by heterosexual men.
That makes no sense.
Because the crime for that person is about control and not about sex at all.
About humiliation.
Yeah.
Which goes back to Bill Federer speaks about this in the Muslim world. And that is one of the ploys used
absolutely
there. It's always amazing when you learn something new, and to have a camera watching you when you're getting this information, it's like a little, wow. So, and this is why we do this show. Not all of you have the time to go out and find these resources to look through this research. And so I'm thankful that I have an avenue that I can give it to you. Thank you for listening. If you're listening now, thank you for caring enough to pay attention. If you know Miyoko Hikiji, or if you'd like to have her come speak, you can go to her website, allicouldbe.com. allicouldbe.com. You can make a connection with her there. What groups do you speak to? Churches? Do you speak to schools? Do you speak to community? Where could people have you come speak?
I really do a variety of speeches. I do have some for students who are looking at understanding how to serve in their community outside of military service. I do speak to church groups. That was a theme in my book that didn't really have as much attention to it as I would have liked, was how my faith really played into sort of my feelings of how I survived that experience. I speak to veterans groups, women in leadership.
Great. You seem to be very healthy. You seem to have managed all of these obstacles, challenges well. What would you give as a help to those who are listening to this? Either we have loved ones in the military, or perhaps someone out there who may be hurting, not doing so well. What would you say to them?
I would tell them to never give up. I mean, I think that's a very and I've been in some very dark places in the symptoms of my disorder. So I know that there can be times when the situation can be hopeless and you get the sense that there really isn't anyone who can understand. But there really is. You just haven't found them yet. And so you never give up. And as you continue to search, avenues will open up. I mean, that's something that I've always believed. And of course, for me, I've been fortunate enough to always have God as that avenue when there weren't other human beings around for me.
And I wasn't sure I was going to say it on this show, but let me just explain. When I interviewed a World War II veteran who was a survivor of the Palawan death camp and the Corregidor death march, and he says he didn't survive the Bataan death march because he was actually on the north side of the island when they did that, but by God's grace, he survived it by having taken a mission on the north side of the island. He was one of 11. His name is escaping me right now. He's from Ankeny. He just passed away a couple of years back. We used to have him come speak. His book is called Last Man Out. Sweet man, served as an Iowa State Patrol officer here in years. Lied to get into the military early because he felt so compelled to serve his country. But I asked him one time about post-traumatic stress syndrome after our military people were coming back from Desert Storm, from Iraqi freedom, from these later missions. Why? We didn't hear about it at World War II. And his comment to me was this, on air: Tamara, when we went, we saw the evil. We knew we were there to do better, to do good. 2, when we came home, we didn't have people second guessing us. We didn't have a media that was calling our every move and waiting to criminalize what we did. 3, we all had a faith. We all knew a God. Some of it was stronger than others, but we didn't question God. And he felt like that was what gave our military men and women their sound mind. Timothy promises us a sound mind. So I'll just go ahead and throw that in there for you. And you can think about it. You can agree or disagree, but you give God credit for when I see you before me, whatever you've dealt with, I see a whole person. I see somebody doing very well. And I guess I don't know you very well. I've only met you in the last hour, but
I would say that was a very wise man. I would agree with all 3 of those points. Absolutely.
Very good. So to those people who are listening, you can get more information on this particular bill. We're coming through it exploratory just as you are, but it's an attempt. This is how you make solutions. If you've ever tried to fix something around the house, you know that first fix isn't always spot on. Sometimes you have to come back and improve. So the bill doesn't have a name, but it is sponsored by Sodders or Hatch. For more information, you can go to legis.iowa.gov. Try and do a word search, and that key phrase I think that we'll get that for you is sexual abuse in state military forces. And then here's the phone number. This is off the top of my head, so there's no guarantee on this, but you can try it. 515-281-3371. I think that's the state Senate switchboard. 515-281-3371. Just a guess, but I think that's it. You can call and speak to either of these gentlemen. You can call and speak to your senator. Here's why. Over 700 bills are offered each session, not to mention the bills that are still sitting from the first year of this General Assembly. So these legislators, your friends, your neighbors, your men and women that you've sent to represent you in the State House cannot possibly be an expert on every bill coming. They're going to need your help. And oftentimes they are caught up by the public policy groups, the special interest groups who will benefit from it, those who are promoting it. But seldom do they hear from you, you who will pay for it. And so they need to hear from you, whether it's a good idea, what you think about it, what you ask information. You learning about it could help them learn about it as well. So a great way to do it. Miyoko Hikiji, thank you for joining me today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you.
Anything you want to say to our listeners or viewers in closing? I know I should always warn people before we do that. You've given them much to think about. The book is called All I Could Be. Mm-hmm. The website is allicouldbe.com. We know that sexual assault in our military is an issue we need to correct. Sexual assault anywhere is something we need to correct. And we do it by stopping the rhetoric of those who would do the so-called war on women, who would make it an issue on sex. Let's stop talking about all the superficial and start talking about what really matters, who we are as people. Quit allowing others to put us in groups where we get our power from groups and an identity of a group. We are groups as individuals. The power is with we the people. And it starts with you trying to make a change where you are, just like Miyoko has done with her book and this bill. I am Tamara Scott. Thank you for joining us. Be encouraged and never be complacent.